Final two. Abraham Lincoln said, "The best way to predict the future is to create it." But what if you don't know what to create or how to create it? Or what if you're making choices now, but you're not sure if it's going to lead to an outcome you would desire in the future? The truth is, we're never going to know. But going into our second book, The Defining Decade by Meg Jay, she has spent nearly her entire career studying individuals in their 20s, as she refers to as 20-something-year-olds. And she's been able to identify patterns and has lessons she would like to share with the reader to help them with their future self. And I'm sure she would agree with me, but that although this is based for 20-something-year-olds that she's been studying, this can go for anyone at any age in their life. The main point is that the sooner you learn it, the better off you'll be. But if there's something you don't know and you're 30, you're 40, you're 50, or you're younger and you're 15, this will still help you. I like to tell people that it's either going to be a lesson or a reminder. Anytime knowledge is being shared, it can't be bad, right? As long as it's in a productive manner. So, have some text to read to illustrate some of these points, and we'll hop right into it. The first one is in the introduction, and it's actually a quote from a song. Any Pink Floyd fans, and it's quoting Time by Pink Floyd. And it says, "Tired of lying in the sunshine, staying home to watch the rain. You are young and life is long, and there is time to kill today. And then one day you find 10 years has got behind you. No one told you when to run. You missed the starting gun." The first big point that hits home just from listening to that song or reading it for the first time in the text is that we need to go. Whatever age you're at in life, if you haven't started pursuing a goal or started trying to progress forward to the next stage in life, it's going to go quick. I know everyone says it goes quick, and at the time it may seem long, but just look how far you've come and imagine what's to come. That kind of sounded like a rhyme. I don't know why. But really, the point is, if you look back maybe over a single night, how much time you waste, and a night goes by and it seems like a flash. And then you look back over a year, maybe you took a class, you were in some program, or maybe you haven't seen a family member for a year or a friend, and you look back and go, "Oh, it's already been a year since I've seen you." Well, think of how many years you have in your life. It's unknown, but if 1 year can pass in an instant, you have 10 years left, you have 20, or do you only have one? It's going to go quick. And if you're filling that void, I don't want to say nonsense, but if you're filling it with something that's not going to help you progress, there's no one forcing you to grow. If you don't constantly try to push yourself to that next level, you're never going to go. You're just going to stay where you're at, waiting for that next visit with a family member, waiting for those timestamps that happen every year, whether it's a holiday, a visit, a vacation, and that's going to be your progress in life. But in between that, you're just going to be waiting. You're never going to be growing. Next page, it's one of the intro pages, XXVI. There is a saying that hope is a good breakfast, but a bad supper. While hopefulness is a useful state of mind that may help many downtrodden 20-somethings get out of bed in the morning, at the end of the day, they need more than optimism, because at the end of their 20s, many will want more than diversions and record collections. I know this because even more compelling than my sessions with struggling 20-somethings are my sessions with the now 30-somethings and 40-somethings who wish they had done some things differently. We think that by avoiding decisions now, we keep all of our options open for later. But not making choices is a choice all the same. And that last sentence there is a real eye opener. So many people think that by avoiding doing something, they're not hurting themselves. We associate a choice with a consequence, right? If we make this decision to go out one night and it has a consequence, or if we want to drink, or if we want to do something that's going to harm ourselves, we can identify a correlation, right? But not a lot of people look at the things they're not doing and see how that's affecting them, which is a whole different mindset, a whole different way of looking. What if you try and sit back in life and look at all the things you're not doing and try and think about how is that affecting me not only today, but in a year? Let's use fitness, for example, because I like using fitness as an example because so many people do not want to accept or partake in fitness and accept how important it is to their health, when I'm sure we can all agree that you need to be at some degree of fitness, some level of degree of fitness to be healthy. But we don't want to think about it. We don't want to do it. And so many people put it off. But are you thinking about the consequences that's going to have on you in a year or 5 years? If you're not taking the time to get in shape now, are you planning on having kids later? What role model do you want to be around long enough to spend time with your kids? Or even more so, by the time they potentially have kids, and to be in good enough health to spend time with your grandkids? And in what shape are you going to be spending that time? Because I know, I'll keep saying, nothing's guaranteed in the future. But if you don't have any goals or hopes, then that's a whole nother mindset issue, right? But looking at your health, we don't want to sit and look at things we're not doing. And with fitness, people don't want to accept that, hey, if I want to get in shape, I'll do it later. Well, what if you've already developed some disease or condition from your lack of activity over 10 years, right? Because we can start doing things at any time. I'm not trying to discourage anyone. I'm trying to encourage you to start at whatever point you're at in life. But especially if you're younger, start sooner. Don't wait. Don't hurt yourself for 10 years and then start, lie to yourself that you can just start 10 years later and you'll be fine, because you're going to have to reap what you sow. The repercussions of those last 10 years is what you're going to have to adapt and overcome from, and potentially live with whatever problems have developed in that time. And that's what you should worry about. So just remember that whether you make a choice or not, everything in life has consequences. I'm sure we've heard that before, but it's the truth. And sometimes looking at the choices you're not making can maybe open your eyes to the choices you should be making. Next page in the intro still is XXX. A colleague of mine likes to say that 20-somethings are like airplanes, planes just leaving New York City bound for somewhere west. Right after takeoff, a slight change in course is the difference between landing in either Seattle or San Diego. But once a plane is nearly in San Diego, only a big detour will redirect it to the northwest. This is a really good analogy, because it's kind of expressing the point of consistency and dedication to something, to keep doing it year after year, and how, like the snowball effect, all that progress will eventually add up to something big. So like your life, if you work towards something that you really want to do throughout your whole life and you're that dedicated and consistent, most people will become successful or very proficient in whatever they were doing just from the mere time they spent in whatever hobby or job it is. In the example of going from, Seattle to San Diego, it's a good eye opener to what's going to happen if you don't start dedicating yourself to something. If you're already almost to San Diego, kind of on that flat line of not doing anything, and now you want to go up to Seattle, it's going to be a big hurdle to overcome. And like with life, if you're living a life right now where you're not trying to progress, and 10 years later you decide to progress, you're going to be behind where you could be now. So once again, I'll say, if you're late in life, still start, because you still potentially have years and years to come. But the main thing is, like what Jay was saying to 20-something-year-olds, if you're young and you have all the time in the world, start now, because by the time you're 30 or 40, all of that work you're putting in now is going to be multiplied. Page 19. Many 20-somethings have limited themselves to huddling together with like-minded peers. Some are in almost constant contact with the same few people. But while the urban tribe helps us survive, it does not help us thrive. Next one, it'll go further with this point in page 21. Rose Koser called it the weakness of strong ties, or how our close friends hold us back. Our strong ties feel comfortable and familiar, but other than support, they may have little to offer. They are usually too similar, even too similarly stuck, to provide more than sympathy. They often don't know any more about jobs or relationships than we do. Weak ties feel too different, or in some cases, literally too far away to be close friends. But that's the point. Because they're not just figures in an already ingrown cluster, weak ties give us access to something fresh. They know things and people that we don't know. Weak ties are like bridges you cannot see all the way across, so there's no telling where they might lead. I think these 2 points are a very great lesson in life that so many people don't want to accept. We're around people all the time. We're humans, right? We're around groups, and we tend to cluster with the same groups of people over time, whether it's our family or our friends, people we don't like. Think of your job, how often you're around someone. But let's focus on friends. Friends are great. I won't say great role models. I should say they have a profound impact on our lives just by being around them. And they say, or what I like to say is that when you're with someone, if you're not careful, it's like a gravitational pull. If they're below you, you're either pulling them up or they could be potentially pulling you down. That's why they say try and go around people who are better than you, because you're going to be able to learn from them in that aspect. Now, granted, there's different reasons you're hanging out with different people. But what I'm trying to say is if you have certain goals, go back to fitness. If you have a fitness goal and you're constantly hanging around people who have a sedentary lifestyle, who are against working out, and you're trying to eat healthy and they love eating unhealthy foods, you see the impact that's going to have on you. And so many people want to ignore that because of the things they do offer. So they look at the friend as the one thing they offer. Let's say they offer humor, and you're forgetting about all the bad things because you love the fun things you do together that are humorous, which is perfectly fine. But when we blur the lines between what we like about them and let the bad things about them impact our lives, that's where the problem rises. Because you like one thing about them so much that you begin doing the other things about them. So if they're living a sedentary lifestyle, you begin being sedentary when you're around them, and you begin eating unhealthy foods. And what does that mean you're doing? You're compromising. So there's compromising in every relationship, but the problem rises is when you're compromising your progression. Is it fine to have a day where you sit back and relax and take a break? Yes. But if you're hanging around a certain group or a certain person that's pulling you back from your life, and it's hindering you because you're losing sight of what you want due to their influence on you, That's where the problem is. These strong ties can sometimes be strongly holding you back, from even progressing from something that you want to do. She's going to go a lot more in depth on stories if you read it, but time and time again, there's a group of friends, and one friend has an idea to go out and do something that they want, and their friends will hold them back. They won't be encouraging them, even though everyone has their own ideas and offers their own things to a relationship. Someone who wants to go out and do something more that's not in line with the group's goals is shut down. And one person, when they went out and did it, they succeeded. And it just should open your eyes to the people you're around. Not for the bad or good things they're doing, but the bigger thing is how you're letting that influence your life. Because you can take something away and give something to any person in life, right? But if someone's taking away a part of your soul, something that you want, that should make you rethink your perception of what's around you, And going into the weak ties, if there's people around you who maybe you look up to, or people you're not really sure about or what they're doing, like this is saying, reach out to them, because progression is good. If you can learn something, maybe open your eyes to something new or get a new perspective. Progress is never bad. Learning is never bad. It's better to have more knowledge, and then you can choose what you do with it. But if you're misinformed, living as a robot in the same group, you know where that assembly line gets you. So start thinking about who you're around and how you're letting that affect you. So it's not necessarily who they are as people, but it's taking a look at yourself, how you're letting everyone around you affect you or potentially detour you from your goals. Page 31, a wise man makes his own luck. This is the time to be connecting, not just with the same people having the same conversations about how work is lame or how there are no good men out there, but those who might see things a little differently. Weak ties are the people who will better your life right now and again in the years to come, if you have the courage to know what you want. Kind of reiterating the point I was trying to make. If you have the courage to step out of that small focused group you're in and try and look out to the things you really want to do and look out to people who may really help you get there, then you just might get there. The only thing is, you're never going to know until you take that step out. And like I've talked about before, becoming comfortable with being uncomfortable. It's comfortable to stay where you're at with who you are and what you're doing. But eventually all those people may leave you. And what if you're left in that path that you never wanted to be on and everyone else is left, right? What are you going to do then? Versus being on a path you want to be on, whether or not anyone's on it, you would be happy being on that path because that's what you want to do, and stay on it. Just because you're following a path that you want to do doesn't mean you can't talk to your other friends who are on a different path, or family. You just have to stay focused on what you're doing, and the biggest thing is not letting them detour you from what you want to do. Understanding the power of influence and how people can influence you certain ways, even if you realize they're not doing it. Even if they're not telling you, hey, don't pursue your goal, just from their actions alone, they can be inspiring you to be lazy or to do a path that they're doing. Actions, they say, speak stronger than words, or words speak stronger than actions, which either way applies, because sometimes words are stronger when they're telling you not to do it. But other times, think of certain times where people may have come up to you and say how they've looked up to you when you may have never talked to them, but they just watched you do certain things. So you have a lot of influence as a person, whether you're talking to someone or not, or whether it's through your actions. People are always watching. And same thing, that's what you need to realize about yourself. You're always watching those around you. And if you're around the same person who's doing something that you know is going to hurt you, that's something you'll see when you first meet someone. You may realize, hey, that's not really a good action that the person's doing. But over time, you may become numb to it. And why are you becoming numb to it or ignoring it? Is it because you're slowly accepting it as an acceptable behavior? That's something to think about with yourself, right? It takes a lot to stay resilient and consistent with what you're doing and not detour off that path. The last thing I want to do is read this last bit from the book, and this will be on page 39. And before I do, I want to say, you see, I'm stopping on page 39. I'll do more excerpts in another video, just for more points. But this book has a lot of good lessons. Whether you know them or not, for people who are young or any age, learning how to maneuver life, or at least give you a little tips, is better than nothing. If there's ever someone out there who's trying to help you maybe have a little edge in life and find a little more meaning and a little more direction, why wouldn't you take that, right? If you care about yourself at all, you should want to try and give yourself the best life you can. So with that, we're on page 39. By thinking through his actual options, Ian stumbled onto a 20-something version of what psychoanalyst Christopher Bullis calls the unthought known. Unthought knowns are those things we know about ourselves but forget somehow. These are the dreams we have lost sight of, or the truths we sense but don't say out loud. We may be afraid of acknowledging the unthought known to other people because we are afraid of what they might think. Even more often, we fear what the unthought known will then mean for ourselves and our lives. Ian pretended that not knowing what to do was the hard part, when somewhere inside, I think he knew that making a choice about something is when the real uncertainty begins. The more terrifying uncertainty is wanting something but not knowing how to get it. It is working towards something even though there is no sure thing. When we make choices, we open ourselves up to hard work and failure and heartbreak. So sometimes it feels easier not to know, not to choose, and not to do. But it isn't. And I think that's a great point, going back to not making a choice is a choice of itself. Sometimes it's hard to move out of that friend group, to accept a dream that you want. How many people shut their dreams out? How many people dream as a kid? And why, when you get older, after you're hardened in bone, you shut those dreams down and tell yourself, this is your life, and these are the people you're around, and this is what you do. When deep down inside, I'm sure you could think of something you want to do more and someone else you'd rather be. And a quote I like by Jim Rohn is that we must all suffer one of two pains: the pain of discipline or the pain of regret. The difference is that the pain of discipline weighs ounces while regret weighs tons. And I think that speaks volumes, that it seems like a lot to say, but people say life is suffering. And to an extent, that's true. Every choice we make, like mentioned earlier, has a consequence, whether how small or big. And if it feels good now to be doing what you're doing, I'm not saying what you're doing, but I'm saying if you live a poor lifestyle, if it feels good now, that doesn't mean it's going to feel good in 10 years. And that pain is going to feel like a ton weighing down on you. It's like certain foods you eat that make you feel sick an hour later, and you know it's going to make you feel sick an hour later, but it feels good when you're eating it or drinking it. And we keep doing it over and over again. Even though we know it's bad for us, the pleasure we're feeling at the time seems worth the pain until the pain comes and we regret doing it, right? And what you're doing now with your life may seem fun and it may seem pleasure filled. But the thing is, this meal is life, right? You can't just keep doing it over and over each day for lunch. This is something where you could be doing pleasure filled activities just like that meal feel good, but 10 years down the road, you're going to feel that pain. And unfortunately, we only get this one life. Yeah, you're either going to have to try and progress forward from that point and try not to live in that regret, right? Keep pushing forward. But the point I'm trying to make is whatever point you're at in life, don't go another 10 years with regret. Go another 10 years with discipline, because discipline is that pain you feel at the moment, but after the fact is done, you feel the gratitude, right? And that's the difference between the pain of discipline and pain of regret. So we only get one life. Fill your cup and take a drink and hope it's filled with discipline. Hope it's filled with discipline. So I hope some of this helped, maybe open your eyes. There's a lot of good information in this book. More talks about relationships, having kids, your family, people you're around. It dives way more into it than what we did. But I think these are some good topics to at least get you thinking. And if you decide to read the book, go right ahead. If not, I hope this at least maybe taught you a little bit, if not reminded you, because anytime I read something, there's always stuff I know, but even stuff you know, there's always a new twist on it or a new example. And that's what really makes the difference to help you progress. And then there's the stuff you don't know that makes you go, wow, I'm glad I read that. So check out the next video if you want to hear more excerpts that I found to mean something. And yeah, that's book number 2, The Defining Decade by Meg J.